Hello everyone, and welcome to my Fire Emblem 15 ETC playthrough. I'm USS Gordon Captain, here with...
Jumpy23, what's up?
Now we begin stealth segment. And Stealth is sort of an interesting mechanic for this run. We need to avoid every enemy encounter like we did before. However, Deliverance hideout is a little bit trickier than your typical place to avoid the encounters from, because the enemies have different AI, and specifically in this upcoming turn corner segment, sometimes there's a bone walker that is actually right here in this corner, and then you just run into them because, and that bone walker is kind of annoying.
Fortunately, resetting because you hit an enemy doesn't have an ETC penalty.
Okay, so you can open the door from the back, and that's why we had to walk around. Normally, you would think you could just walk straight through, as other people
Right. My first time playing this, I definitely ran straight up to that door, mashed A, it didn't work, and then I got an enemy encounter. But I didn't reset.
We just recruited Clive and Forsyth. Would you like to describe why Clive is good?
He has Paladin bases. That's about it. In fact, he's worse than Paladin bases because he's a Cavalier, but we're going to promote him very soon. And that actually makes him your best Cavalier or your best Paladin, because Matilda has worse than Paladin bases in bulk. And bulk's all that really matters, because the Rider's Bane is the Rider's Bane.
And the speed wings, speed cheese, and a bunch of other speed boosters get you your speed necessities. So now we go back into a Deliverance hideout because we need to recruit Python. Python starts at a join level of 3, and he's going to need to get to a level 7 by the end of the act, because in Shadows of Valentia, we have this really amazing mechanic in Act 3, whereby enemies spawn on the map based on the amount of time you spend walking around trying to recruit and promote your units. So we try to minimize backtracking as much as possible. This results in the most degenerate strategy known to man.
Yeah, spoiler alert for those of you who may not know strategies yet. Python has to get 4 levels in one map, and that map isn't very many turns long, and Python isn't any good on it. So we'll let you figure out what's about to happen, but the title of the video may give it away.
So here, we also have to use a smoke bomb to avoid the 2 zombies. I assume that since the Riders of Fates were also the Riders of Senran Kagura, that all must have gotten some help from Asuka from Senran Kagura in learning how to teleport away from danger.
Right. So we get silver purse and an iron bow here.
Yeah, that iron bow is actually kind of hard to pick up. Sometimes there's a zombie that guards the front door. That's why I actually ran around to try to despawn the zombie. Don't ask why that works. I don't know either.
And we're just mashing A on every box to try and find gold or silver, because the silver route in this game is quite intense.
I also found a leftover ale. Ale sells for a lot of money in general. And now, jump cut, surprise, we're in Thieves Shrine. Can anyone guess what we're going to be doing here in Thieves Shrine?
If you guessed herding cats, you are correct. You may remember in Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, the minigame where Link has to drive 20 bulls into the pen. That's basically what we're doing here, except for we're driving all the thieves into our attack range so that we can do efficient grinding.
Yeah, so you may notice we have 9. Silk, for instance, is level 4.99, and normally you need to get Silk to level 7. So in a real LTC, that is one that actually paid attention and grinded and rigged levels, you would not have to do this because Silk would be naturally level 7. However, yeah, this is not a real LTC. The other thing to note is that we're going to need to get Python to level 7. Not quite, but level 7 at the end of the map, so we're going to be grinding Python. And then we need Clive and Cliff to get to level 7 each. Not just because they need to promote, but because Zofia Castle. How hard would you say Zofia Castle is?
Oh, it's maybe not the hardest map in the game, but certainly the worst. Your units are still bad, especially if you don't grind, and everything's floor tiles, and Cavs have really good stats, and you don't have a Rider's Bane yet. It's probably the hardest map on Almrad, at least.
Oh, yeah, it's the hardest map on Almrad. I was like, it's not the hardest map in the game. Then I realized I was thinking the game was not all just Ultra.
Right.
So here, it's actually kind of complicated to exploit enemy AI. So enemy AI looks at the amount of damage it's going to do and uses that to determine which unit it prioritizes when it attacks. And what we do is we use that to our benefit so that every brigand is going to target Python and Silk, which are the two weakest units on our party. And so they're going to both get as many levels, since they need a lot of levels to promote.
Right. We actually have to put the leather shield on Claire for later, but I don't think we need to do it quite yet. But when we're grinding up Clive, that's going to become essential.
No, Claire actually did need the leather shield, because otherwise the brigand on her right would actually target her instead of Python.
That's excellent. So every grind turn, because Silk and Python have bad hit, is slightly more than one grind turn when you take into account misses for ETC, but it's like 1.1. So this is, as it turns out, the most efficient way to handle Zofia Castle, because your choices are really bad ETC on the maps leading up to get your XP requirements, really bad ETC in Zofia Castle because it's an awful map with unpromoted units, or you just grind all your units to promotion. To clarify, Cliff and Clive need to hit promotion before Zofia Castle, as does Silk hitting Warp, but Python only needs to promote after, so he doesn't exactly hit level 7 here.
So here we break these barrels. Barrels actually contain ale, and if you know anything about the way money selling works in this game, ale is really cheap, efficient to sell. And normally I hate playing The Legend of Zelda when I play this game, but it's like, well, I guess I'll take the money. There can actually be a rare monster spawn in the Iron Sword area, a Dracui, which has the stats of a level 3 Baron. So I almost tried to grind on them, but you can't.
You just can't damage them?
Yep.
I didn't actually know that about the Dracui. That's exciting.
They have absurd stats. Okay, so now we go in again. It's time to talk about the other part of this game, stealth segment, which is that this is the worst 3D fighter of all time. So Alm's Iron Sword has interesting frame data. It has 2 active frames and 10
Sometimes.
startup frames.
Yes, not only are you trying to hit the worst attack in any fighting game ever, but also sometimes you have fewer than 2 active frames, just because the game isn't a fighter.
Oh yes, the interpolation is terrible. And also the hitbox is actually smaller than most fighting games would have the hitbox be, so that's funny.
Right. Unfortunately, Orisa is too much of a coward to include execution difficulty in ETC. So until we come up with a better benchmark, this is what we're stuck doing.
Oh, execution difficulty. If I was paying attention to execution, not paying attention to execution difficulty, there is actually a pixel perfect way to get all 3 sets of brigands on one side of the map. And then you could grind with 1 unit, have 1 unit kill all of them.
That's unbelievable. This is the same exact grind fight as the first one, so we don't have too much to talk about right now, but we might as well start talking about the next one. So at this point, Silk is getting up there in levels, and she's not going to need too much XP anymore to hit level 7, while we still need to get a good amount on Cliff and a little bit on Clive, and still a good amount on Python. So we're going to change up our strats for the next map.
Yeah, we change up the unit or deployment order, which actually changes where units get deployed on this map. Specifically here, Python gets to be placed in a location where he's only going to kill 3 enemies. This is going to allow Clive and Cliff to get their kills, because they can just 1-round the enemies no problem. Well, Clive has trouble 1-rounding the level 3 brigands, but other units can just 1-round every enemy no problem. So Clive will need to get to level 7 by the end of this grinding session, and Cliff needs to get to level 7 because mostly due to bulk requirements actually for Cliff, and for Clive it's because he needs to have speed. Because turns out Clive gets 1 level of speed upon promoting to Paladin bases, and then Cliff gets a bunch of defense and a bunch of HP when he promotes to Myrmidon, so he actually has equivalent stats to 100% growth LTCs.
He also gets move, which is huge. Roughly huge.
Well,
if Silk had enough attack, move would not matter, but it lets us get by with a little less attack rigging on Silk.
No attack rigging. So Silk has a 95% chance of getting to 9 strength, which will let you spend all 3 strength wells to get her to 12. Meanwhile, she has a very low chance of getting to 11 strength, which she got to, making me look like a fool. It's like 30% or so.
Right. Which allows Cliff to engage enemies 1 turn earlier at the very beginning of the map. Oh, the reason that we need to attack the Brigand instead of just running into him, so you get 2 benefits from attacking, only one of which we care about. You deal a little chip damage to every Brigand in the group that you hit with your overworld attack, but what we want is that you start in like the center of the map instead of on the bottom. If we don't get the attack off, we can't 1 turn the map with perfect XP distribution. Or relatively perfect.
Well, not so much. You can also use later on, we're actually going to use the fact that we damage the enemy, because Clive just barely doesn't one-shot the level 3 Brigand. So Clive will be handling the northern group where he doesn't one-shot. And this is me panicking about the Dracui again. We didn't see the Dracui. But he's dangerous.
It's fortunate we don't run into the Dracui, although, of course, if we did, it just wouldn't be in the footage.
So, for these next 2 grind fights, obviously we're going to have to change our order up. Silk is no longer needed to be in the front. Cliff, with the lightning sword, just 1 rounds everything. And then Clive has 7 move. The one unfortunate thing about only doing 4 grind fights is that we didn't get Claire to swap. But who wants to grind 5 times? Grinding 5 times isn't worth it, probably.
We also do come just short of Tobin to Excalibur, if I remember correctly. But,
and Python to promotion.
Right, but none of these are going to cost us a turn in Zofia Castle, so it's not worth spending the turn in the grind fight.
And it's not worth spending the time to find the correct EXP distribution that lets you do all that.
In 4.
See here, Clive actually one-shots this Brigand, this 26 HP Brigand with his Steel Lance, where he wouldn't one-shot it before.
Thanks to the chip damage from Mom's sword.
And here, we need to actually have Cliff fight all 5 of these random enemies, because for some stupid reason, Cliff is way lower level than Clive, so he needs more grinding.
Right, that's the unfortunate thing of starting out as a villager in Act 1. EXP is super tight. That's why Clive is actually huge. Is any villager cav would be better if they started at level 6. But Clive, I guess his one name is Paladin bases. His other name is like Lances and high base level. And that's all that really matters. He's going to be our Rider's Bane guy in Act 3, just for those 2. His stats almost don't matter.
Clive actually has one other benefit, which is worth mentioning, which is that you get to compare him to random enemy generic calves and realize that they are all better than Clive.
Yes. The Act 1-6 Cavs are not only better than Clive, they are better than Paladin Clive. Except for move, I guess. Which is shocking, to say the least.
I mean, it really shows you why Clive is losing this war and convinced Alm to become leader of Deliverance. He's such a weak soldier.
Right. It might be worth talking about turn wheels and how they go into grind fights. So, the reliability of these would be quite bad if we couldn't turn wheel. We wouldn't die or anything, but it would often go to a 2-turn fight.
As you saw right there, Cliff missed a
Yes.
90-something because there's just so many 90-somethings you want to hit.
Right. Fortunately, we have 3 turn wheels, although it can come to a situation where we need to take safer strats because we use too many turn wheels on player phase. It came up earlier, but we were talking about something else where Faye wants to heal, but if we use a turn wheel on player phase, we instead attack with Faye, just to give us a little more chance of hitting enough attacks.
Yes. This all corresponds to roughly a 30% chance over the course of 4 grind fights, actually slightly less than 30%, that you'll spend 2 turns. It's like 1 in 4. It's not as big as you would expect. More Legend of Zelda grinding, because Leftover Ale sells for 6 silver. Way better than just things. More Leftover Ale.
Mana herbs, I think, are 8. And mana herbs are like your... Wow,
food,
I take it back.
Food is 4, is 2 times the amount of 2 times the amount of HP it heals divided by 10. So 1/5 of the amount of HP it heals.
And a mana herb is like a score because oranges and carrots sell for 2. So Leftover Ale is definitely big money.
Yeah, but the real big money is Ram Wine, which sells for 25. Here we actually do a different setup. Because we don't need as much EXP in all of our units, we need to get Silk just 1 random poke, and we need to get all of our units just a little bit of EXP. We can just grind up do a different grinding route. Now, I didn't check, but I think I could have just given Silk 1 attack on an enemy, and she would have gotten to warp that way.
She needed 10 XP, so she would probably have to double hit because XP in this game scales by how much damage you've dealt.
Yes.
But maybe.
And I could have given Faye some EXP instead of Python, because Python doesn't need EXP anymore. Or I could have given Python and gotten him to promotion instead, like a smart person, but I didn't.
Right, which would just help reliability, because Python wouldn't need to get any kills in Zofia Castle where he has bad hit rates, and he could have instead affected the ETC by helping other people with backup strats.
Yeah, so we're just making sure we didn't make a blunder. This point of the game is so reliable that I don't bother trying to make a strategy and then turn wheel. I just YOLO turn wheel if I mess up. Clive gets a point of strength, and this is the only stat he gained that is not Paladin class bases. So this tells you how
our Clive is basically roided up.
Yes. And then Cliff here gains a bunch of stats, which are also below Myrmidon class bases. Or equal to Myrmidon.
Now we get to promote.
Yeah, we get to promote all of our units to a more important unit. Namely, Clive gets to promote to Paladin. And Cliff gets to promote to Myrmidon.
And Silk promotes to good unit with Warp, but that doesn't need Milla.
Yes. We could have also promoted, if we were smart, Python to Archer and Tobin to Excalibur.
Yes.
But we weren't. As you can tell, Cliff has very, very close to Mirrodin class bases. So
yes, our Cliff got insanely blessed. He leveled speed, I think, 4 times and attack 3 times or 4 times. And none of it even matters. Because this is just Myrmidon class bases. So it looks like he didn't get anything. But actually, Myrmidon is huge for Cliff because ours has been Mondo blessed.
And now we get Clive, who gets Paladin class bases as a unit, which is a better unit than the Cavaliers in Zofia Castle, unlike normal Clive, who is worse than the Cavaliers in Zofia Castle.
Right. I hope you like Paladin class bases, because Clive's growth are really bad. So we're going to be seeing them for a while. Except for speed. Spoiler alert.
Yes, and that's not because Clive's speed growth is good. Clive's speed growth is 25%.
We're not rigging him a speed level. We're forgetting to enter the Shrine's wells for some reason.
Yeah, so we're going to do a jump cut, and now we're going to go to the attack wells.
Right, so let's talk about wells.
The one thing I almost did was get Tobin an attack level up. If Tobin had an attack level up, I could have gotten a completely different unit. Not a regular old Tobin, broken Tobin, who would have had 11 strength and just been able, would have had 14 strength and been able to just double KO every single enemy, but that didn't happen.
Unfortunately, we are just short of broken Tobin, so instead we're doing Praying Silk.
Okay, so Silk gets 1 attack well. Yeah, I forgot which well was the attack well. That lets her get Warp. I'm not going to be giving her the other 2 attack wells. So we need to give 1 attack well to Leon. Yeah, Leon, a unit in Celica's route. That's just how bad Celica's route is. Celica's route units are Doritos for stuff in Alm's route.
Yes. And if you didn't know, I don't think this is actually super common trivia. After Act 2, but before you talk to Alm in the top of Zofia Castle, Celica can visit all of Alm's Act 1 stuff. And we've saved her not only an attack well, but also Fruit of Life in Ram Village.
And a speed well. Alright. That was all the grinding we had to do. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for a real map.